All right, we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this silver sponsorship with Dare to Be Great 3. I have the great honor and pleasure of introducing these two ladies. Today with us, we have Jill Plush with the Kyle Plush Answer the Call Foundation. Hello, beautiful.
Hello.
And we have Tracy Eldridge with On Scene First. Hello, pretty.
Hello.
So welcome to everyone, and I'm just going to go ahead and give the floor to you ladies and let you go.
All right. So thank you. Again, thanks to Ricardo and everybody for having us to do this session. I was having a little bit of internet issues, so I can see the comments. So if things get a little squirrely for me, please don't hesitate to throw something in there and we'll try to troubleshoot. But it is truly a pleasure and an honor to be able to speak with Jill Plush. Many of you know that I spoke with Ron at the North Carolina conference, but anytime we have these presentations, there's so much valuable information to learn. So for those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Tracy Eldridge. I'm with On Scene First, formerly of Rapid SOS. I spent about 4 years there working on building some amazing technology that you guys have or should have in your 911 center. And I have recently launched the company On Scene First that provides training and coaching, as well as the podcast On Scene First with Tracy Eldridge. After spending 20 years in the 911 center, it was time to move on to do some different types of things in the 911 space. But in 2018, I was blessed to meet Jill at the National NENA conference, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But again, somebody I should have never, ever had to meet, but blessed that I have. Jill, would you like to say hello and introduce yourself to the folks?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kyle Plush's mom, Jill Plush, and I'm one of the co-founders with my husband, Ron Plush, with the Kyle Plush Answer the Call Foundation. And we started our foundation back in August 2018. And during this presentation, you're going to hear more about why we started this foundation, the reasons why we started it, and hopefully you'll learn some lessons from what happened on April 10th, 2018.
So first, I want to start with the disclaimer. Anytime we have a session or anybody attends a session where there are things that didn't go right, it is challenging not only for the folks that are giving the presentation, but the folks that are listening as well. The last thing we want is for folks to think that at any point we're, coming after telecommunicators. It is definitely important to understand that there are lessons to be learned when anytime things don't go the way that they should in certain calls. So as I mentioned in the opening, we should not be meeting the Plush family, just like we shouldn't know Nathan Lee or Hank Hunt. And there are many aspects that have resulted in us, getting to know these folks, bringing them into our 911 family. But let's hope that we can keep the borders closed and that we don't have any more families that we have to welcome with open arms. So we're here to learn, not criticize. And let's truly focus on the things that, that could have gone right versus the things that went wrong. So I always like to start with that disclaimer because I do think it's important that we look at these things in a professional way. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jill to start the presentation. So how this presentation is going to flow is Jill has, some things that she definitely wants to share with folks. And then I'm just going to kind of chime in and add some things from the telecommunicator side that are definitely important. So take it away, Jill.
Thank you so much, Tracy. I've introduced myself before as Kyle's mom because my son Kyle is really the reason that I'm here today. I want to share Kyle's story with you to really improve you and uplift you. We're here for you, and we want to help you be your best self every day. So I first want to kind of share a little background. A little over 3 years ago, or not really background, but the story of really what happened. A little over 3 years ago, Ron and I lost our son Kyle in a tragic accident, and it was a day that changed our lives forever. However, we are very thankful for the 16 plus years that Kyle was a part of our lives. He brought a lot of laughter and joy to our family. But following Kyle's tragedy, we had a choice on how we could grow and fulfill our future selves. We decided to share the power of Kyle's voice with you, 911 professionals, who have the ability to save lives. You are 911 professionals who has dedicated your time working in this industry, and we want to say thank you for your service. It is through the work of people like you that give our citizens one number to call to save their life, and that's 911. So we are here today to share why it is important to be your best self on each and every call you take, to be persistent and determined, to think of every caller as possibly being your loved one calling for help, and how great quality people being their best selves every day can overcome obstacles, training obstacles and technology obstacles, because we know those happen. And the importance of managers and supervisors to continuously improve the people, processes, and technology in their centers. And finally, to use every tool in your toolbox, and we'll explain also why that's important. Kyle would have been 19 years old and finishing his freshman year of college right now. He was extremely bright, he was very inquisitive, and he had a very witty sense of humor. You couldn't be in a room without Kyle without laughing. He just had this, he was small, but his personality was really bigger than life. He lit up any room that he walked into with his presence. He enjoyed making other people's laugh because he loved people. And he touched many people in his life. And although he was involved in a lot of different activities, that isn't why people were drawn to Kyle. They just really enjoyed being around him because he loved helping others and he enjoyed making them happy. He was a true leader in his group of friends, and he was admired by his teachers and his camp counselors, and he was always full of energy and ideas. When we think of Kyle, we think of the Latin phrase carpe diem, which means seize the day. And this is really the way that Kyle lived his life to the fullest each and every day with a huge smile on his face while being his best self. So our family was humming along without any real worries. We were always cautious, sharing ideas on how to be safe. Kyle never drank alcohol or got involved in any type of drugs. He had nice friends, and he went to an excellent private school. So I had no reason to worry when Kyle didn't come home after school on April 10th, 2018. He told me he was going to a tennis match after school. So when I got home, I checked my Life 360 on my phone, and I showed Kyle on his phone at his school. Then when it was getting late, I tried calling and texting Kyle. He didn't answer. I then tried to FaceTime Kyle. Still no answer. I thought he probably just didn't have his phone with him. I called my friend who used to be a tennis coach at the school to find out if they normally played this late. He said they usually stay and watch the other students play tennis after they're finished playing before they come home. Then it started to get dark. So I called my friend again, and he said he didn't realize how late it was getting, and he said he would call the tennis coach. When he called me back, he told me the tennis coach told him that he never came to the tennis match that day. This is when our nightmare began. I don't know exactly what happened when. Things are a little fuzzy. Excuse me. But I knew Kyle was in trouble. I knew his phone was at the school, but he wasn't answering. And I thought maybe he was kidnapped. We called 911. Ron left to go to the school while I stayed at home to wait for the police. I couldn't go to the school. I couldn't move. I was so scared. I got a call from Ron. The van was still in the parking lot. The van door was unlocked. He saw Kyle's tennis racket and his backpack, but he didn't see Kyle. Then he looked in the back and he saw Kyle. He pulled him out and he yelled to call 911 and he tried CPR. Later, we learned that Kyle was pinned between the third row seat and the rear door of our Honda Odyssey van. His arms were pinned and his chest was compressed by the seat, and he was having difficulty breathing. He couldn't use his hands to reach his iPhone because it was always in his left front pocket of his pants. So when most people are panicking, Kyle was able to think clearly, and he used his knowledge of technology and innate creativity to make 2 successful 911 calls. He used the hands-free Hey Siri function on his iPhone to call 911. In his 2 911 calls, Kyle shared that he was trapped in a gold Honda Odyssey van in the Seven Hills thrift store parking lot to send help because he was dying. It was not a joke. And if he didn't make it, to tell his mom he loved her. However, help didn't find him in time. Kyle died due to asphyxiation on April 10th, 2018.
So on the next couple of slides, we're going to go ahead and play Kyle's calls. And what's going to happen is on the next slide, Jill will go ahead and turn off her speakers and she'll mute herself because she doesn't necessarily need to listen to the calls, but it really is important. And the reason why I have the coin toss there on the bottom of the screen is, Kyle did do everything right, everything he was taught to do. In fact, he thought outside the box. And as I mentioned in my session with Dan Wright yesterday, sometimes telecommunicators get frustrated with all of the tools and all of the things that are available to us. But in this case, Kyle had many coin tosses to win, but he lost them all. So, Jill, can you go ahead and turn your audio down and mute yourself? And when we get to the slide, that will let you know to come back. So these calls are not easy to hear. Again, as a disclaimer, if you also want to mute yourself, if at any point you feel uncomfortable, or even after the session, if you're struggling, don't hesitate to reach out and I'll be happy to kind of help you through that. But these calls are very important to hear. And what we will do is we will kind of go through each one after and talk about some of the things that didn't happen. Jill, if you want to mute, you have some background noise too. You should be able to do that right from the screen, but I'm going to go ahead and play.
Hello, Cincinnati 911. The address of the emergency. Hello. Cincinnati 911. The Seven Hills West parking lot? Where are you? Hello? Hello? Where are you? Hello? Where are you? Can you hear me? Yes. Where are you? I can't hear you. I think that's what you do. What is the address? I'm in help. Help. I can't hear you. Where are you? Hello? Where are you?
So the call now disconnects. It looks like it did disconnect on Kyle's side. And then a couple of minutes goes by and the second call comes in. So we're going to go ahead and play this second call. A lot of folks will ask the question, why wasn't the telecommunicator responding to him as he was giving all of this information? But you'll see that the call taker activated TTY. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as well.
What is the address for emergency? Anyone there? I can't hear what you're saying. You're scared. Wait. I probably don't have much time left to tell my mom that I love her if I die. This is not a joke. This is not a joke. I'm trapped inside my door. I don't know how to get there. In the software parking lot of 7 Hills. I'm all dead. Can you hear me? Hey, Siri. Hey, Siri. I'm gonna go. All the blood.
So as you can see there, Kyle had made a call while the police responders were still on scene, and we're going to go ahead. And talk about each of those things. We'll unpack several of the things that we need to as far as how those calls went. So, Jill?
So now we want to share the resulting actions from the Cincinnati Emergency Communications Center and the Cincinnati Police to Kyle's 2 911 calls. This was the CAD entry that was made by the telecommunicator that for Kyle's first 911 call. The first telecommunicator received Kyle's call at 3:14 p.m. and the call disconnected at 3:17 p.m. 7 minutes after she received Kyle's first call, the first call taker entered the following in the CAD system at 3:21 p.m. The police communications officer, this is what it said. The police communications officer heard female stating, "Help, help, I'm stuck inside my van. I'm in 7 Hills parking lot. Location from phase 2. Complainant kept stating she was unable to hear police communications officer. Caller hung up, voicemail on callback." She added the following information in the CAD at 3:22 p.m., possibly in thrift store parking lot across from school. The call was classified as a code 2, giving it a high priority. And when the Hamilton County deputy called this telecommunicator asking for more information, specifically inquiring about phase 2, she didn't provide Kyle's precise location or any of the additional details of the call, but she just gave a general description of phase 2 mapping technology. The dispatcher shared this information over the radio with the officers at 3:22 p.m. Unknown trouble, 5471 Red Bank Road, female caller, call taker can hear female yelling, help me, I'm stuck inside my van. I'm in Seven Hills parking lot. We got the location from phase 2. Complainant kept stating she was unable to hear the caller. Caller hung up. Voicemail on callback. She is possibly in the thrift store parking lot across from the school there, 5471 Red Bank Road. So
there's a couple of things that I would like to add as far as what gets put in the CAD and what gets dispatched out. Now, if you had listened to the call and then look at the dispatch kind of verbatim, you'll see that there are a few very distinct things that were not accurate information. So number one, that Kyle was identified as a female caller. Now, I know in a lot of the training that I've done, if we don't know and we haven't asked the question, reporting party or calling party is probably a more appropriate way to identify the person on the other end of the phone if we don't know for sure. And a lot of times we don't, because what I feel happened in this situation, especially with the school resource officer, was that we have now, that telecommunicator painted a picture where they're looking for a female. On the second piece is that the word stuck versus trapped was used. I always told my telecommunicators to not make stuff up. We put in the log what is being said. And I know when we talk about, or when Nathan talks about the Denise Amber Lee call, there is a distinction between Jane Kowalczyk's call, where she says there was a child crying in the car, versus a child screaming in the car. These words, while you may not think in the moment, when you change them or transpose them, they come to life in a very different way. So being stuck in a vehicle versus being trapped in a vehicle are two very different things. So when you're painting that picture in your CAD, make sure you're painting a Picasso, not a kindergarten drawing outside the lines. As far as phase 2 goes, if that telecommunicator puts in their phase 2, we need to get better at making sure that our officers and our responders, first and foremost, know what phase 2 even means, right? And then the third piece I just want to point out here, and we'll see in just a couple of seconds, is voicemail on callback. Kyle's voicemail said his name was Kyle. A school resource officer called for more information. Think about your school resource officer. Would they have known who Kyle was if that information was relayed, versus kind of taking the time to explain what phase 2 information was? Jill?
So the current slide here is a map of the parking lots that surround Seven Hills School. So I just want to also point out that the people who saw this on TV and then they went to the actual school were really surprised at how small the parking lots really were, since the impressions they had from television were that they were much larger. In this photo on the left, there's the red dot, and that shows the location where Kyle's van was parked. And the blue dots in the right photo, they represent all the alley and the latitude and longitude geolocations of Kyle's cell phone that were received by the first call taker. And as you can see, many of these dots are overlapping and they are very close to Kyle's location. So I'll let you kind of share a little bit more about that information, Tracy.
Yeah, so every telecommunicator that's within the sound of our voice right now knows that this is not a common occurrence, that the phase 2 location that is there right out of the gate is usually not this accurate. And in Kyle's case it was. And, through some of the trying to understand what happened, there was confusion for the telecommunicator when he was saying over and over again that he was in the Seven Hills parking lot. There was a question for her as to, was it the Seven Hills high school, or was it the Seven Hills laundromat? And I'm gonna come here just for a second. I just want to reiterate the importance of understanding the uncertainty and confidence that is available on your 911 phone system, your call handling equipment. As I traveled across the country with Rapid SOS and talking to folks about location accuracy, I always tried to reiterate the importance of, number one, knowing where your uncertainty and confidence is on your call taking. Number two, understanding the importance of it when it comes to dispatching a call, right? So when we look at Kyle's call on the next slide, where next couple of slides, we're going to talk about a 7-minute delay because of the telecommunicator not being confident in where that exact location was, despite all of those phase 2 locations. That particular uncertainty and confidence was within 25 meters. So being able to look at your map and feel confidently that that call is within the allotted meters that are there is really important. So definitely want to bring that back up. The other thing is we've relied so much on the telecommunicator, or rather field responders have relied so much on the telecommunicator to paint that picture of location. And in the situation, she did give a number address, a street address, possibly in the parking lot. And when I first had conversations with Jill and Ron, they couldn't, the person in the outside, the civilian, the lay person, they couldn't understand why the telecommunicator did not give the latitude and longitude of the 911 call that was coming in. And it was very difficult for me to have to explain to them that, number one, that isn't a standard of practice. And when they asked why, I was heartbroken to tell them I don't know. So I encourage folks in all my trainings now that, number one, when we have to give a better location, we need to get better at giving identifiable measures, whether it is latitude and longitude, whether it is the what 3 words application that Dan and I talked about on our session yesterday, or the second piece of it, we need to make sure that our field responders know how to take that information and what to do with it, because there were a lot of factors that contributed to them not being able to accurately identify where Kyle was. So Jill, I'll pass it over to you before we share this video.
Okay, yeah, and also, I mean, that address from the school is actually accurate. It was on the side of the street where his van was, and he wasn't in the thrift store parking lot, but he was on the side of the street where the thrift store parking lot was. And you'll see in this video that I'm sharing with you now that was put together by the Cincinnati Enquirer, it shows the route that the Cincinnati police took when they arrived at the school. And although there's a lot of parking lots in the school, I want you to take note of the location of Kyle's vehicle. And although they were given an address on the other side of the road from the school, they continued to search the parking lots on the side of the road where the school was located. And they never even entered the parking lot where Kyle's van was parked, nor did they ever get out of their police vehicle to search any of the cars, or more specifically, the very few vans that were parked in that lot, in all of the lots.
And I just want to reiterate to all you telecommunicators, you know that chances are at the top of that screen, as the officer was driving down the road, he communicated, I'll be out in the area. And if you notice, he drove right past the thrift store parking lot when that was information that they had to look there. So we know that your hands are tied on a lot of situations. The other thing too is, having to explain to the Plush family that even though they were given the physical address, the majority of our field responders are going to go to the location based on the building or the business that is given to them. And they're not paying close attention to the actual addresses. And again, it's hard to explain, but if we can get better at training our field responders on how to better locate addresses, and when they don't, training our telecommunicators to better follow up and make sure that they checked the locations that were given to them.
So as you can see right here, they never entered the parking lot where Kyle was located. That's actually, if they look how close they came. But the address that was shared over the radio that included the address 5471 Red Bank Road is very close to where Kyle's van was parked. And there weren't very many cars in vans. They were specifically, he made it specific to a van, and there weren't very many vans in the parking lot. She also didn't share the, it's also easy to remember an address when you visually see it versus hear it, such as over the radio. So it's, having mapping. But I also want to kind of add this in is, if your officers didn't find anybody, be persistent and be determined and call them and talk about it. There really needs to be some more communication there. And
I think, and I want to reiterate that, in this particular situation, so the first thing that we're going to look at is what we can learn from this is that first bullet point right there. It took 7 minutes for the call taker to enter it into CAD. And part of the reason for that was she wanted to make sure that she was getting whatever information was available to her. And she had two different folks, a supervisor and another telecommunicator, listen to that call before it was entered into the CAD to be dispatched. There were things that were heard, such as the banging and "I'm going to die." And when we look at the narrative, those things were not entered as pertinent pieces of information that should have been relayed to the responders. Again, painting that picture of that priority.
There's also some more important facts that we want to share about the first call taker, the second call taker, and then the police. So the first telecommunicator, as Tracy just said, it took 7 minutes to dispatch police. And then the telecommunicator classified the call as unknown trouble instead of rescue. And had the trouble been classified as rescue, and the ambulance and fire truck would have been dispatched to the scene. The first telecommunicator had the caller's precise location via the wireless mapping technology that she manually requested, including the latitude and longitude, but she only shared the address, which was 5471 Red Bank Road. And then in the CAD, she shared information with the first responders, but she didn't make reference, and she made reference to a female caller without confirming that it was female, and Tracy already talked about that. And it would have been helpful if they had shared Kyle's name. They could have shared that. I mean, this was a school. Like, if they would have said, anybody in the school named Kyle that drives a van. Well, high schools keep record of that. I mean, you have to file something with the school when you want to park on their parking lot, and you have to include the details of your car and, who's driving it and license plates and everything. So, I mean, that's just another kind of piece of information that I think is important. When you're in a school and somebody's calling from a school, you got to get the school involved. The first call taker had an incredible amount of information from this first call, but she didn't share it all. And what she did share it didn't underscore the emergency that was really happening. She didn't say that he was trapped inside his van and he was in need of rescue. She didn't share that the caller was pounding and screaming and saying he was in desperate need of help. And she didn't share that the caller said they were going to die soon. If she had shared any of these details, then it would have increased the urgency of that call with the police.
And with the information being added, as you saw on the previous slide, or you'll be able to rewind and go back to what was dispatched, is that settling for that information, right? So when the call was played back a couple of times, those were things that were communicated from the other people that heard them. Now, I know in full disclosure that there are times that we don't hear things as telecommunicators. What I'm going to charge you with is going to come in that second paragraph with the second telecommunicator, and it's the last bullet point there. So when Jill goes through the second part, we're going to talk more about that.
So can they see the second telecommunicator, yep. the stuff, because on my screen it has us covering it up, but
yeah, they can. Yep, they should be able to.
All right. The second call taker treated the second call as a silent call, and she improperly enabled the TTY function. And so if you don't know what TTY is, and you have that in your center, that's something you need to get trained on. You can hear the caller talking very clearly when the second call taker turns on the TTY equipment. When the TTY equipment is turned on, the caller's voice is reduced by 75% and the call taker's microphone is muted. So the second call taker never played back the second call. And it is standard that if you think you have missed something in real-time call, you play it back. So if she had listened to it, she would have heard, I'm in a gold Honda Odyssey van. I'm in the sophomore parking lot. I'm going to die. Tell my mom I love her. So the second call taker did not make record of the call. She never advised the dispatch or the officer was still on the scene that she had received a second call from the same caller, although she knew that there had been a previous call from the same number earlier.
So I think those are a couple of really valuable points, right? So to be kind of blunt, no telecommunicator should be holding the flaming bag of anything before the music stops to get rid of that out to somebody. So making sure that anytime a call comes in that may potentially warrant a response, it goes out to somebody. And in this case, I'm going to play that devil's advocate for a moment. If this was an actual silent call, now it was not. When you listen to the call, you hear Kyle talking in the beginning and she went into the TTY function. Here's where I have my biggest concerns with TTY. In the class, I do an 8-hour class through the public safety group. The title of the class is When High Profile Calls Have Higher Impacts. And we unpack a lot of these situations and things that we can learn and make sure that they don't happen again. But one of the things that I've learned in teaching that class already across the country is when I start talking about TTY and the importance of understanding when to use it and furthermore when not to use it, I get a lot of blank stares. I get folks asking me, how do I find it on my call taking system? And these are folks that have been dispatching for a really long time. So my charge to you is this. If you have not used TTY ever, if you haven't used it in a really long time, if you don't have a test call program in place like we do here in Massachusetts, I implore you to go back to your center and make sure you know how to use that feature for when it's needed. And I also implore you to learn how to not use it when you shouldn't be using it. There was nothing in this particular call that indicated that the TTY function should have been used. So that goes back to training. On the flip side, I'm going to give you another challenge. That last bullet point says she did not replay the call. And again, I'm going to play that devil's advocate. Most 911 telecommunicators will get a silent call or a call that it doesn't appear to be anybody there, or maybe they did go into TTY. If they don't have an accurate location, or even if they do, a lot of times those calls are not acted upon. But I will tell you that the majority of them do not get a call back. Many of them, more, do not get a playback. So I'm encouraging folks in every one of the training classes that I have, when you have a silent call, when you have a TTY call, when you have a call that officers are not able to find. Now, I know this cannot be done for every single call, but I do know that there are a lot of calls that it can be done and should be done. We need to get better at listening back on the instant call recorder, because there are a lot of times that little pieces of information get missed. And I wouldn't have felt good sitting there not knowing if there was something else that might have been able to be heard in this situation. So 2 things: get back into your training with your TTY and start playing back these types of calls where you may have missed something when the call picked up and your automated recording was going out, or you might have missed something. If you notice that second call, the telecommunicator, when she said Cincinnati 911, right after she said that, she cleared her throat. And when she cleared her throat, there's a high likelihood she didn't hear what was being said. So think about how many times we do that. Jill, police side?
So the police officers who responded to the first 911 call were given all the information that they needed to find the caller, although they could have been given so much more. The first dispatcher shared the following address with the police, 5471 Red Bank Road. And as I said before, if that was where Kyle's van was, pretty close to where his van was located. So if you would put that in your phone right now, it's about 12 parking spots south of where Kyle's van was located. And the officers had their cell phones with them, which they used to call Kyle. So, that's what Tracy was talking about before. We kind of thought, well, why couldn't they, if they didn't have mapping technology in their cars, couldn't they have just put that address in their phones to find his location? And the officers drove around the Seven Hills School. They drove into every parking lot surrounding the school except the lot where Kyle's van was located and the location of the address they were given. According to the priority 2 classification that was assigned by dispatch to this call, the officers knew this was a high priority call. They knew he was inside a van, yet the officers did not get out of their vans to search for the caller. And this call was assigned as a priority 2 call. So why didn't the officers ask why the call was assigned as a priority 2 call since they didn't find anything? The officers also, they had questions about what phase 2 location meant. So, obviously there's some training issues there. And then the officers on the scene drove around the parking lots with their windows rolled up, knowing that someone was screaming for help based on the information received in the CAD. The officer mentioned to the school resource sheriff at the school and on the body cam recording while driving around the parking lot that they didn't expect to find anything. And this alluded to the fact that they thought it was a prank call, and they actually admitted that later when they returned to the parking lot around 9 o'clock.
So there's a couple of things I want to add here as well. So yes, I did have to explain to the Plush family that police officers aren't readily going to take an address and put it into their personal cell phone for work-related purposes. That's number one. Number two, we've never made that big of a stink to make sure that they have technology capabilities in their vehicle to put that address into Google Maps. And three, it comes down to that training piece. As I mentioned in the session with Dan Wright yesterday, and I'm going to reiterate it here, I don't think we did a very good job, and I say we as a collective whole in 911, to make sure that our field responders know what we're talking about when it comes to the different types of locations, whether it's a phase 1, a phase 2, a rapid SOS location, or we want to start engaging with giving them the what 3 words location. We have to get better. If you're a director or a manager or a supervisor that has the ability to drive change, we encourage you to go back and drive change and make sure that all of your responders, your field responders, police, fire, EMS, are very aware and understand how you guys are getting location and how they can better use those resources. The other piece is that didn't expect to find anything. We've seen those videos before. They are public record where the officers are not even on the property, but a couple of seconds, and they've already decided that this was a prank call. This is all going to come back to dispatch too. Now, we cannot change what the officers believe, but we can paint that Picasso picture to make sure that they don't have the opportunity to think that this particular situation was a joke. And that goes back to what was being put in that narrative.
All right. I think if you can move to the next slide, Tracy, thank you.
Yep, I just moved it.
So when we found out that our son's death was preventable, this inspired us to find out exactly what happened and how the response to Kyle's pleas for help could go unanswered. How could he not be found? So we knew that Cincinnati's 911 center needed improvements, but we didn't know what changes needed to be made. But our number one concern was to improve public safety in Cincinnati to make sure that a call to 911 for help never goes unanswered again. In June, only 8 weeks after the life-altering call on April 10th night, a series of events happened, and instead of going on a scheduled family vacation, I went to Nashville, Tennessee, and I attended the 2018 NENA conference. I wanted to learn as much as I could about 911 to make positive changes to the 911 center in Cincinnati. And as Tracy said before, that's where we met at that conference. At this conference, I was embraced by so many caring 911 professionals like Tracy, and also from across the country, who have really become our friends and our mentors and changed our perspective of the 911 industry as a whole. And this is where we received the inspiration for the Kyle Plush Answer the Call Foundation. Following the 2018 NENA conference, I had a sense of peace. Peace that the incredible 911 professionals from across the country that we met at the conference were going to transform the people, the processes, and the technology in 911 centers across the country. They were all deeply committed to make sure another tragedy like Kyle's never happened again. So we ended up forming the Kyle Plush Answer the Call Foundation in August 2018 as a way to channel our grief to make a positive difference and save lives in memory of Kyle. So we're really here for you. Like, we want to make positive change and support you. The mission of the foundation, is uplifting families and communities to live their best lives and advocate for common sense public policy that fosters safer, friendlier, and more resilient communities. The vision statement of our foundation is answer the call to be your best self each and every day. So we decided to introduce the Kyle Plush Answer the Call Foundation in August 2018 on national television. You can go ahead and switch to the next slide. There's still a lack of understanding nationally about the limitations of emergency response. The public is so surprised to hear this, that if you call 911, they should be able to find you, because Uber and Lyft can find you. Why wouldn't the 911 professionals who need to help you in a life-threatening situation be able to find you when you're in a life-threatening emergency? But thanks to Rapid SOS, pinpoint accurate location is something that each center can have on a caller with the right type of phone. I remember talking to my mom in the airport in New York on my way home, and she said, "Jill, that is a big mountain you have to move." And I said to her, "I know it is, but we have so many people that are helping us move this mountain." And I was talking about all the 911 professionals we met at NENA, and they've made it their mission in life to improve the people, processes, and technology in the 911 industry. And that really includes you. And it includes you because you're attending conferences like this to improve and get better. So we knew if we were going to pioneer change, we had to reach out and connect. So we decided to deliver cookies to 22 911 centers in Cincinnati and the surrounding areas. The original intent of our cookie deliveries was to open the doors to a conversation about changes needed, but the response we received was far greater than we expected. The surprise of the telecommunicators when our volunteers showed up with freshly baked cookies was great, but it was the hugs, the tears, the notes, and the deep gratitude that was beyond description. It softened our hearts and reminded the telecommunicators why they were there. We encouraged them to be their best selves. We received dozens of notes. One dispatcher wrote, "I put the vision statement as my background on my work computer. I read it every morning when I log in." We were like, wow, one small act of kindness really made a difference. If one dispatcher is reminded of the importance of their job that day or in the days to come, if they are being their best selves, someone calling 911 will benefit. One caller's call will not go unanswered. So we continued to visit 911 centers, sharing our message of answering the call to be your best self every day. And we would ask if they had Smart 911 in their area or Rapid SOS in their center. In one center in Knoxville, Tennessee, they told us they did not have Rapid SOS, but she had heard something about it. And before our conversation ended, she had gone back through her emails and she found the information about Rapid SOS. So today, we are happy to share that they are successfully using free Rapid SOS technology. And that's in a lot of centers across the United States. I mean, they're really in so many centers. I mean, it's hard to find one that doesn't have them in it. So our foundation, we visited 8 centers and East Tennessee, and we kept going to Indiana, Kentucky, Arizona, Florida, Washington, a total of 8 states and over 100 911 centers, and that number just keeps going up. The Kyle Plush Hands the Call Foundation also influences the public by sharing cell phone safety tips and the importance of signing up for Smart 911. We also speak at fiscal budget meetings to talk about the importance of funding public safety in their community. And we are happy to report that following these meetings we attended, these counties have successfully received enough votes to ensure the funding is available for their 911 centers. Our foundation also wants to personally recognize you for the hard work that you do every day saving lives. We want to hear your success stories of when someone in your 911 center has answered the call to be their best self and saved a life due to their persistence and determination. Our foundation will honor this individual with a ceremony and present a challenge coin to them that basically thanks them for answering the call. Let me see. I want to make sure that I'm able to finish up on time.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. We also want to share the importance of supportive 911 supervisors and leaders, because you, the telecommunicators, are the most important asset in a 911 center. Great quality, well-trained people in your 911 center are able to overcome issues with technology. However, if a center has the most up-to-date technology but is not able to keep quality, trained, and dedicated people working in their center, the technology really isn't going to be very helpful. So I kind of want to just share, I want to try to sum this up quickly. We visited Marshall County, Kentucky, and we learned that their computers were so outdated, they couldn't even use headphones. And they didn't have radios to talk to first responders. They had speakers up on the wall. So their calls would come in by speakers. And so when we went to visit them, they are obviously actually asking for more funding. That's really why we went there. But they shared with us, even though they didn't have great technology, they shared with us how Kyle's tragedy changed their attitudes. So they said they received a call after Kyle's tragedy. They received 2 911 calls, and they were hangups. And normally they would just try calling them back, and if nobody answered, that would really be the end of it. But because of Kyle's tragedy, they didn't give up. They were persistent and determined to find out who this caller was and where they were located. So they used the Rapid SOS tool in their toolbox, and they weren't able to find a location. So then they call it texty, but it was their text to 911. And they texted the caller, and they were able to make contact that way. And the caller they were in trouble in the land between the lakes. And it was because they didn't just stop after their normal, but they kept going, and they used every tool until they found a tool that worked, that found the location of that caller. And I just like sharing that, because I think, we don't have to have great technology, but because if we have great people, we're going to be able to find that person. You just got to think outside the box and use your tools. And as you already know, the most important piece of information you need to get a caller help is the caller's location. And you must be persistent, and you must be determined to find your caller. If a call seems strange, find out why. Kyle was able to make a call from his iPhone, even though he couldn't reach it using the hands-free SIRI. But this is why he wasn't able to hear the telecommunicator. That's why he wasn't answering her questions, because the speaker wasn't on. And also, the next thing, be your best self each and every day. Don't forget why you started in this profession. You started in this profession to help people. And think outside the box. With new technology and creative callers, it just might be the only way the caller is able to reach out for help. For example, if you look at our website, the stories of our challenge coin recipients, you'll see these people who are being their best selves. They not only used every tool in their toolbox, they were thinking outside the box. And also, I want to really point out this, when you use every tool in your toolbox, you have to remember that your supervisors and managers or coworkers are also tools in your toolbox with different experience than yours. So a lot of the stories that we receive where people are receiving challenge coins, we're awarding more than one person because it really is it's a group. It's a team of telecommunicators and supervisors that work together to find these callers and get them help. So your first responders are also tools in your toolbox, and you have to communicate with them on every call when you're having difficulty with that caller. And finally, text to 911 and Rapid SOS are also tools in your toolbox. Rapid SOS location, as I said before, and Tracy is a great resource for this. They are free for 911 centers nationwide, and they really are sharing location. I also found out recently that some cell phones, Tracy, you might have told me this, some cell phone carriers are actually better at phase 2 location than others. And we were actually on the Sprint network, which actually gives better phase 2 location than other carriers. So I just want to thank you for attending this training session today and for dedicating your life to public safety. We hope that understanding Kyle's story has been helpful. And thank you, Tracy, for helping out. Your added expertise is always so appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you, my friend. And I just want to wrap up. If we have any questions, I think we have a minute or two. But yesterday, Dan Wright from Baldwin County and I did a session. This is how you can get back to that session. Go to the Dare to Be Great conference site on Crowdcast and watch the replay there. We talk about how Rapid SOS, what 3 words, TextD, Google Plus codes, Google Voice can be used to have those tools in their toolbox. And again, a lot of these things are free. So don't ever be that telecommunicator that didn't do something. Always defend why you did be your best self versus why you didn't. So thank you so much, everybody. We appreciate you. And here is our contact information. This is where you can find us on social media, email addresses. And if you would like a copy of the presentation, don't hesitate to email me and I will be happy to send that PDF over to you. Also, folks have asked for the calls to use in their training. I can also send you that stuff as well. So thank you, Jill, for allowing me the honor to present with you.
Thank you.
Brave person for sharing your story. I'm super proud of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. So the next sessions start in 15 minutes. So those will be the bronze sessions, and we will see you there. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.